Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 87 of the Titanforge podcast. I'm Ratnos, joined by Trell and Tettles as well, who's got a nice vibe going on in your room there. Did Bert just walk in?
Yes, always.
Bert's tail is so fluffy, just right at the end of the,
Yeah,
just
because
the very tip of the tail.
he got like shaved, right? Except they don't shave the very end of the tail, right?
Yeah, they also don't shave his feet.
Yes, he had big like mittens on his feet for
Yes.
for the longest time. Very nice. Glad to see that. This week we will be discussing, in addition to Bert, we've got the continuation of our last week topic, which we were originally just going to do along with last week, but ended up being that last week went on long enough that we figured we'd break it into two episodes. So this week we're going to talk about some specific pulls in Mythic Plus. The original idea was to talk about these in the context of how to help your tank with them, but we can expand that a little bit to just talking about these are some tricky pulls that are mostly on the tank, I would say, or mostly ones that are felt by the tank, but of course everybody in the group can help make them easier. So that's what we're going to go through today. We've got some clips to help out with them, although if you're watching the audio only, or I guess if you're not watching, but if you're listening to one of the audio only versions, well, maybe I'll link all of the clips in the description somewhere so you can find them at your leisure later. But we'll explain where the pulls are at least as well, so it shouldn't be too impossible to follow along. This week, of course, has been push week so far. How's push week been going for you, Trell?
Not great. I've gotten like 50 IO. I haven't really been playing them very much, to be honest, but trying to stay a little relevant so I can tell people what's going on.
That's good. How about you, Tettles? How's your push week been going?
I've been doing some keys, some nice 22s and 23s. There's some insane keys being done this week. There's like a 25 theater and shit, and I sit there, I'm like, I guess I'm just gonna sit here with my 23s. This will be fine. I still have a 20 sanguine depths from 2 months ago. I haven't stepped to that dungeon since. Yeah, it's going fine.
Yeah, so this week, let's see if I'll pull up what the best runs of the week have been so far. So we're on Saturday, and so far we have 25 Necrotic Wake, 25 Plaguefall, the 25 Theater, 225 Theaters actually done this week. Only 1125 so far, though. Yeah, I think that with the Necrotic Wake weapons nerf, I'm not sure we're going to even see like a 26 this week of any dungeon.
Do you see Eris Smelly on that list? The Kyrian Holy Paladin.
There's that. Oh yeah, who's that? Is that
Ellesmere's?
Is that Ellesmere?
It's Ellesmere backwards or where the hell it is. But yeah, for some reason he's playing Kyrian in some of the dungeons.
Interesting. Okay, so these are just two different. It's not just like an April Fool's rename thing. It's two.
Those two.
Yeah. Okay. So in some dungeons he's just playing Kyrian because Kyrian owns. That's cool.
That character's real trap. I don't know how he managed to rat that character into a 25 Plaguefall. That character's like 212 item level.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's impressive. It looks like the Plaguefall. Let's see. They already had a Plaguefall. They didn't already have a theater. Oh yeah, they already had a Plaguefall. They already had a Plaguefall 25 that he then brought his carry into another one.
Yes.
So maybe because it wasn't Dio, they nerf let him bring it.
Well, it actually sounds like the last boss is easier as Kyrian H Pal.
Makes sense.
I guess if you can do the rest of the dungeon as a under eye level, then that's a better pick.
Yeah, because you have it for all three phases. You have a toll.
Yeah, I mean, Holy Paladin, not exactly the highest throughput healer all the time.
Couple of other friends of the show also showing up on the in the list of 25s. Here we got Jack B. Caston on his Holy Priest, top healing priest in the world. I think I saw on his Twitter.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to see.
Andy Brew, Nagura, both DPSing in the same gang. Rare to see Andy Brew on the DPS side, not the tank side, but that's where he's at now. And of course, a bunch of other extremely powerful gamers up here. So yeah, push week going well so far. I myself have done 2 keys. They've been weeklies, but uh, they've been fun. I've been getting all my alts kind of set up. Finished all my Covenant campaigns, including I swapped Covenants on a couple of them as well. So it's been, I don't know, it's been something. Okay, so anyways, in other news, the 9.1 PTR Blizzard has announced will be coming up in about 2 weeks. It's a weird announcement, actually, to see a announcement of when the PTR will be coming up. Usually they just kind of put it up without telling us. But a lot of people were doing this kind of sky is falling, the patch isn't until 2023 style thing. So my suspicion is that they were a little bit worried. They wanted to get in control of that narrative.
Dude, I've literally never seen them announce a PTR. Normally they're like, yeah, PTR is up now, raid testing next week. And then you're just like, okay. But I've never seen them be like the announcement to the PTR launch.
Yeah. And then that means we'll get raid testing as well this month, probably, which is pretty sweet. Do love raid testing. I love... It's always at like the same time the podcast airs, usually, is when they do their raid testing, but in the middle of the week. So, not always the most accessible time for everybody, but it's when their devs are, of course, at work. So that's when they do it.
Well, it's European friendly. Which...
Oh yeah, they have. That's true. It's friendly for, and I think they have a different time for maybe. Actually, no, it's just one time for the whole world.
It's one server. Yeah. China does their raid testing too.
Yeah. So if you're in OC or wherever, you've got a very, very tough time doing raid testings.
They don't raid test, really. But yeah, no, it's European friendly, which is like the largest player base. So I think it does make sense that it is that time as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what is in this new raid. I've got high hopes for it. We'll have to see, of course, though. That'll be something we'll talk about as soon as it does come out.
The resummoning Stone generals.
Could you imagine if they just do like, yeah, well, the Stone Legion generals died, and when you die, you show up in the Maw. So here they are again, and it's just a carbon copy of the fight. It's just the same fight.
General Draven's still getting stuck in walls, even after death.
All right, let's see. Let's move on. Let's do tip of the week, and then we will get to our main topic, which is discussion of specific pulls and M+. Up first, my tip of the week is Renown catch-up. If you don't know, if you haven't done Renown catch-up, either on an alt or on a Covenant swapped character, or on just a character you haven't logged into for a while, the way it works is, and there's a Wowhead article that explains it as well, but in addition to, so that you can never get the Renown from the campaign without doing the campaign. So you always need to do the campaign to get those 8 or 9 hits of Renown from those. You can never get the weekly Renown hits without doing the weekly Renown as well. So you can't get those last 2 points if you haven't done your weeklies that week as well. And this is something that I didn't appreciate before, is that the earlier points of Renown have more catch-up options for them and more catch-up % chance than the later ones. So if your character's Renown 3, you're going to get a Renown from every single calling you do, and from any like heroic or normal even dungeon, or anything like that, at like a random battleground or whatever. Those points are really easy. If you're trying to get Renown 35, that one you probably won't get it from your callings. You might get it, but it's much rarer. You probably won't get it from any given dungeon, boss, or anything like that. Although it can drop, but at that point it's down to a very small chance. So if you want to min-max your sequencing on this and you want to rush to Renown 40 as fast as possible, what you want to do is you want to save your campaign to the end. Save your campaign until your character's up at Renown 32 or whatever, and that will let you then get those hardest points from the guaranteed campaign points, rather than doing some of the earlier points with it. If you don't care about that, though, you want to just get your character power spiked sooner, just do your campaign as it comes along whenever you have time for it. Because you may not have the will to do it later.
How worth is it to grind to 40 versus, say, 35?
There's no power level increases after 34, 35. 35 is the deepening bond, I think.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So if you care about that. But yeah, I mean, it's literally only cosmetics from 36 to 40. There's a couple different reasons you might want to be 40, including future-proofing your character, right? Like you may wish to be 40 next patch, but if you're going to stay that covenant for the next couple months, yeah, there's absolutely no rush to go from 35 to 40 in any kind of, like, you can just do it with the weeklies over the next several weeks, or even just like one random weekly every 2 weeks will get you there probably by 9.1. But if you're doing something like what Flex is doing, which is the turbo sweat strategy of getting...
What is he doing?
He's getting all of his characters, all 4 covenants to renown 40, so that he can then swap to any one next patch and have it already be at 40, which it's unconfirmed whether or not this will have, practical benefits, but it might. So if you're doing that, then you would want to, really min-max and get each covenant to 40 as fast as possible.
It will not have practical benefits. That is so fucking cooked that he's doing that.
It probably won't, yeah. And it's probably true as well that you can get from 0 to 40 in less than 7 days, which is how long the, swapping back to something you've already beaten timer is.
I mean, dude, I've seen that guy only ever play 2 characters in prog, ever too. So the fact that he's doing it on so many characters makes me question why.
Do you really need to get some of the more obscure Covenant class combos ready? But on the other hand, those are the ones that are maybe the most likely to get buffed. So it's tough. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty there, and people want to get as close as possible to the feeling of being able to play whatever build they want. Being able to swap to whatever build they want. So that is kind of how you do that. But yeah, that's the lowdown on Renown catch up. Trell, what is your tip of the week?
Yeah, my tip is another random dungeon thing. So the third boss Inspires, as a tank player, has a weird mechanic where this is pretty unique and new, where he won't actually ever cast his tank hit unless you step inside of his hitbox. So he has the red reticle underneath his feet, and if you step inside that, then that triggers his stomp ability. But if you just stay outside that circle the entire time, you run around the boss and drop the AoE mechanic off, then run around the boss again instead of through the boss, and he will just never do it. So if you're worried about surviving, you can just stay at max range the entire fight. But also, triggering the stomp can be beneficial so that you can get him into the burn phase faster as well, because he spends energy every time he stomps. So it's just something nice to know about as a tank player.
How much energy did it cost him to stomp? Do you know?
I want to say it's 10% of his energy.
Okay, yeah, I felt like it was that as well. So because I know that you can get him to 5 energy, and then he won't cast basically any of his abilities, because he just doesn't have enough resource for it. So that is something.
Does he have to do his recharge?
He will though. He's got 1 ability he casts for 5 energy.
Okay.
I think it's maybe a zap thing or whatever, the circle or something. I'm actually not sure, but
yeah.
The circle is the one that hurts the most. You want as few of those as possible, assuming that your tank can actually.
Yeah, if you can live it as a tank, I think triggering the stomp is a good idea. I mean, not just to increase the ratio of something you can survive to something you can't, but also just to get him into that recharge phase faster. But it kind of compounds the damage on your tank, because getting to the recharge faster means your tank is soaking the orbs more often, depending on what your group composition is. If you need the tank to do some soaking. There's some
pros and cons.
I think the play is just you want to get him to that second burn phase if you know that your group's going to kill it early on in the burn phase, just to make the fight 10 seconds shorter or something.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to be able to kill it right then, you got to soak a whole nother set of orbs. So maybe it's not the play.
All right, let's take a look at Tettles' clip of the week from Dorky Bear. What are we looking at here, Tettles?
So Dorky shows you exactly where to stand to be able to use flap to be able to make it all the way to the over the gate and be able to tag the pack that has been patched recently. Alternatively, of course, you can use stuff like Hunter Pets, Warlock Pets, Shadow Fiend, DK Pet, all that shit works.
Brewmaster, Windwalker Pets, although that's a huge CD to send in there in ways.
Sending Zwin and Duzhao in there, I'm not exactly sure if that's the move, but maybe. I don't think those are exactly on the same level as Shadow Fiend, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, it can be worth. But yeah, so
sending Zwin in there would be really feels bad.
I mean, it's better than fighting those two things by themselves, though.
It's true.
Probably. But yeah, it's a thing of last resort. But seeing that spot there for the flap, it's like just where the shadow intersects is where I did the disengage and flap from. So
exactly.
That's the kind of thing that players, like high-end plus players, often will do, is that they'll find like a exact spot where they can do something every time based on like the ground pattern, the art on the ground.
Yeah.
I remember several of those from BFA. Okay, let's move on into our main topic, where we're going to talk about some specific pulls and how to manage them. Before we talk about those specific pulls, we do have a kind of broader piece of the strategy that we maybe didn't talk about last week, but is worth covering for basically all of these pulls, which is the Cardboard Assassin. And we definitely talked about this at some point on the show before, but it's worth re-upping this because it's a really useful thing, this expansion. So Cardboard Assassin is a belt tinker from Cataclysm Engineering that lets you create a Cardboard Assassin, which is like a little taunting target dummy that, you know, forces enemies to attack it for a couple seconds. So this is useful not just for your tank, but for basically everybody in your group to have on their belt to prevent your tank from, like, to basically use as like a mini trees on your belt on a 5-minute
so
goalie.
Dumb. Yeah, it's so dumb. Like
it is extremely dumb for sure.
It's hard to track too. You can only really track it once someone uses it, so you can see the CD on your party members via a weak aura. Maybe I can put more in the show notes, but yeah, basically you have 5 people in the group. Tanks are so squishy. All 5 people have to have this belt enchant, so you can't use any current expansion belt enchants because you're using the Cataclysm one. But you rotate them, and the tank basically has like 12 seconds of trees where they don't take damage.
What was that targeting dummy that people used for Urgroth and
yeah, that was just called Target Dummy and Advanced Target Dummy, which were also, I think those were like vanilla engineering items that you could craft.
Those worked on one target.
Those soaked one auto, yeah.
Oh, one auto, yeah.
Or one ability. But if you timed it right with Urgroth, like if you got in between his swings, you could get the spell.
The Spirit Breaker, yeah.
Yeah.
This is like, it taunts the whole fucking pack of trash, which is...
Yeah, they live for like 3 seconds.
It's so questionable that this is a thing still and that they haven't fixed it.
Yeah. It's definitely a commentary on the state of tanking. I've seen a lot of discussion on Twitter about this recently, about how whether or not the tank, meta of kiting is still a problem post-tank buff, or whether it's a case of like people, I think JB's perspective is people are choosing to bring the worst tank healer, and that's...
I mean, you're not healing through that.
I think there's some of column A and some of column B. Like, I do think that...
Yeah, there's definitely some of both.
When you're playing with a Holy Paladin.
I can actually live... Yeah, if you're playing with Holy Paladin, you really can't base tank for long if they're out of CDs, if they're not in wings. If you're playing with, like, Restoger, they can actually keep the tank alive for quite a while, but then they don't do any damage to the mob, so you lose time on... Like, even though you're tanking the pulls in place, you lose time just because you don't have a Holy Paladin.
Well, I mean, my opinion on this is that, like, you're never really able to heal a tank through, like, existential danger, right? Like, the tank is going to die almost independent of whether or not... Like, okay, so the healer can allow the tank to die if the healer's not actively healing the tank enough, but very infrequently is the healer going to actively keep the tank alive through more healing. That's my, like, general thoughts on, like, the state of healing.
I think sometimes that's true, but I think there's a lot of spots where, it's a healer getting bombed with Resto Druid Hots for 30 seconds or a tank getting hit with the full suite of hots versus a tank that's getting, like, a little bit of paladin and healing whenever they're not casting damage globals. It's a really marked difference in how survivable you are, and it definitely means that you don't have to kite as much.
Maybe.
Yeah, you're both right. Like, Tells is thinking of, like, the block uptime, downtime type thing. To where, as soon as you drop shield block or demon spikes or meta, then you're gonna die, right? No matter how much.
Yeah, you're dying to like 2 auto attacks.
Yeah, it's like regardless of your healing. Yeah,
right.
As a brewmaster or bear, Gyarnos is absolutely right. Where if you have a healer bombing you the whole time because of your steady mitigation, then you can actually stay in the pull for quite a while. Usually, unless it's like the Larian pull and Spires where they just clap you instantly.
Yeah, that pull's a fun one.
That pull's ridiculous. Dude, whenever you put Larian in our show notes, I had to like Google. I was like, what is this mob? And then I figured it out. I was like, oh, this is that. Okay.
All right, so let's start off with our specific polls section. We will not do the Larians because that's not the order it's in on the show notes. Let's start with the other side Ardenwold poll. So how do you guys want to do this? You want to look at the clip first, or explain what we're talking about first?
I think we just talk about it.
Yeah,
while it's going, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think we explain what the poll is first.
All right.
So the DOS Ardenwold poll is typically just like a bunch of birds. It's a lot of that, and you try to avoid as many hatchlings as possible. It's like the Elder Horns, the Rune Stags, and potentially also the Spritelings. I think in the clip that we have is just the Spritelings, which, I mean, they're also annoying. And like I feel like the polls are set up in a very similar way to how you're going to play them for the whole entire area. Maybe Charles has a different opinion though.
Yeah, this is
pretty much the same.
This is like the big Urn poll with the yeah.
I mean, pretty much anything in this area, once you pull more than 3 targets, you can't tank for very long. So you just do your best to gather them up. Use every AoE stop or trees or cardboard in your party's utility belts, and then you kite. So like in this clip, I'm gathering and I'm using a bunch of CDs while I gather, because those like 4 or 5 seconds where I gather is the only time I can really face tank. And then they hit the urn, and then right out of the urn we get some trees and a stun, and I think someone holds them in Sanguine a little too long, but then we would kite.
Yeah, Sanguine's actually really rough with any of the urn situations, because like you pull super big, but then if you don't earn instantly, you can actually have them be earned there. But yeah, you can see a stun comes out, and we get a lot of Sanguine healing on this one. But
yeah,
you know, the tank doesn't die, so mission accomplished. Worth. Yeah, there's a couple different. Good.
I was gonna say, how do you feel about tank survivability on this pull? Because I feel like tanks don't die that often on this pull.
That pull's actually not too bad. That's probably the easiest one.
The urn, whatever pull you're doing onto the urn, is usually one of the safer ones. I think it's especially, I mean, this is urn with pride as well.
Yeah.
I think that the scarier pulls are often like the first pull you do in this area, or if you, as you get past the dragon, if you pull that matriarch down, you know, don't skip the matriarch down down the way, which folks sometimes do. I mean, it can all be tough. The things that you mentioned to avoid, the hatchlings, if you do pull a hatchling, you need to stop its cry cast with like a stun, or else it is pulling the matriarchs within 100 yards or something, a million yards, some extremely large AoE that is guaranteed to pull some, basically. So that can be very catastrophic. And then depending on the week, you can get affix buffed sets of other mobs. The thing I didn't appreciate on like Bullstring week, I think one of you guys pointed this out, was the big stags that don't really do anything, they just auto. They are also the source of those swirlies on the ground.
Starfall,
yeah. So if the Elder Horns are bolstered, those swirlies will hit for like extra. And so, or if they're raging, those swirlies will hit for extra because the damage is sourced from them. And so you could just get one shot by something that does not normally one shot you. So watch out for that if you're including those in your pull. But I mean, the thing about the other side is that if you're doing this keystone at a high level, you need to do like this wing in 2 or 3 pulls, and that means you're going to have to do some combination of enemies that's tough. And I would say that the hardest one is usually whatever biggest pull that isn't onto the urn you do in the area.
Yeah, for sure. And actually what makes it so hard is that even though gathering is kind of tough and you usually almost die while just picking everything up and putting it in one spot, all the normal birds do a ranged instant cast on the tank. So no matter how far away you are, they beak slice you, and they keep stacking up, so beak slice gets more and more powerful every time they hit you for the whole pull. Mm-hmm. And so you can't really kite it. You have to just live through it while not hitting anything actively and running away. So you're really at the mercy of your healer. So if the pack doesn't die within like 30 seconds from the AoE burst, then it's probably going to end up with the tank dying eventually.
All right, let's take a look at another The Other Side pull. This is a Fallen Death Speaker pull, which there's a couple different Fallen Death Speaker pulls you will do in this dungeon. I guess there's 2. There's 2 different ones you do in this dungeon. This is the one on the right-hand side here. We've got Dorky's perspective. So what's the main thing you want to look out for when you're doing one of these big pulls with a Death Speaker?
The main thing is Shadow Core. That'll hit you really, really hard, and you want to call kicks on that guy especially. But the other thing is all the little guys also just beat your ass the entire time. So you have to like have a healthy balance of going into the pull with a major CD up, or even 2 maybe on a high enough key, doing a lot of damage for a little bit, and then kiting and calling kicks on the Death Speaker while you kite if possible.
Yeah, they also do a Death's Embrace, which is like a haste buff. It can be purged off or ideally spell stolen by a mage so they can get a haste buff. That's also something that is pretty useful.
Yeah, but you can see Dorky going in here with Incarn and Ursox Fury Remembered and is still under a lot of pressure. It is a really high key, though, that they're doing this. This is a 24. One thing that I really love as well about Dorky's movement here is you can see he's like doing these like little kites, but he's doing them in this circle to keep everything in this flame patch. That is really contributing a lot of extra damage. This is not something you do on this pull in specific, but it's just generally extremely high skill tank gameplay. See that kind of stuff.
That sidestepping is like, so he actually mitigates the amount of autos that he's getting just by doing that like little bit of sidestepping. So the whole entire pack won't be meleeing him at once, or at least like he can actually just like walk out of range of some of the melees, and so the mobs will have to like reconnect with him.
Yeah, it's their scribe cast actually. It just like doesn't connect if you're slightly out of melee range, which normally knocks you back a little bit too. So he's controlling it a lot by doing the sidestep. So he's knocking out like 4 different things that help by doing that.
Yeah, this is a pull. The landing those Shadow Core interrupts as well on a high key in particular is really, really, really vital. So you can see they've done a really good job here of stopping every single one of those. So that is exactly how that's supposed to look. Very cool. All right, let us move on to Halls of Atonement. Halls of Atonement has several tough tank pulls. I think the things that are most scary for tanks in this dungeon tend to be whenever there's bears involved in pulls, or whenever they go into like a Shard of Halkias type situation with no cooldowns. Those have been the times that have been scariest.
Obliterator's Wicked Bolt without being kicked is
sure,
like,
yeah. If
really
things are free casting, that's also sketch. So what pull are we looking at here in Halls? We've got a clip from Trell's stream on this one, a nice 22.
Yeah, this is one that went wrong actually, but this is a big pull and it has everything that's dangerous to tank all at once. It's got a caster, it's got groundskeepers that smack you, it's got the bears, it's got an archer, and it's got one of the guys at frontal. So everything all at once. This is a pull where you really don't want to face tank for more than a couple seconds. I didn't have a boomkin, so I was trying to stretch out my time to get threat by using other stuff, and I spent too long doing that, and I actually died in this clip.
Okay, yeah, so this is just
should have just kited earlier.
Damage too much, and at some point you need to roll away there.
This is actually like what is so beneficial for having a healer that can bomb heals into you is because I was actually able to sit in that pull for 8 to 10 seconds without kiting with minimal help. But I still, even if I kited right then, I still probably would have lost threat to the mage, which is so tilting as a tank player. So that's why I was so hesitant. But the play definitely would have been for me to kite and just try to make someone else solve their own problem, you know, like have the mage mirror images or viz and deal with the threat themselves. I should have just bit the bullet.
Do you think that there's any way to do something here with like Ring of Peace to, sort of kite a little bit? Like bring them a little bit away so that they're not all hitting you, but they're also not killing your mage?
That's another thing I could have done. I could have ringed early and then kept them in place. But I wasn't sure exactly if I should do that because it's Sanguine, and I didn't know if stuff was going to die like right as I started the ring, I just wasn't sure. I haven't done enough keys yet this season. So that's something you kind of get with experience and who you're playing with.
This pull in Sanguine in particular is really tough because you've got the low health groundskeepers that are likely to die and create Sanguine puddles early in the pull, so you want to have your bring effects for then. And you have the Houndmasters that are archers, right? So they don't cooperate with their movement. And they also like to jump around and cast their rapid fire. So if that lands them in a Sanguine puddle, for instance, that can be really, really bad. So, there's a huge incentive to save your displacement effect for that as well. So yeah, this is just an example of one of those really, really tough pulls that punches a lot of direct damage onto your tank. There are several such pulls depending on how you do this dungeon. I think this is kind of a Brewmaster specific pull because of the Transcendence tech that you started the pull with. I'm not sure how many other tanks would grab all of these mobs at the same time. I guess you could maybe do it with just ranged abilities, tag them all.
Yeah, you can actually tag all that from up top, I think, and you can also get gripped by a priest if you have a priest in the group. You can actually just walk right back up the path if the patrol's in a good spot as well. But it is easier as Brewmaster for sure. And also, I want to say that this dungeon, I think Halls of Atonement gets like a under the radar, really, really difficult tank dungeon because of how Freehold was. Freehold was like maybe the easiest tank dungeon because everything was physical damage. You could just focus on one thing. Mm-hmm. But this dungeon, even though it seems like Freehold, is probably the hardest to tank because every pull basically has bleeds, a caster hitting you, and Fernals to dodge at the same time. Or a giant shard of Halkias just punching you while thrashing that you have to worry about.
That's a really good point. I mean, this dungeon is like almost 100% of the burden of like being able to time this key is definitely on the tank. The advantages of this dungeon is that the burden is on the tank, and the downside of this dungeon is that like your tank has a lot of responsibility for whether or not this dungeon is going to be successful. Because the DPS, like, yeah, they can stop the loyal beast, but like even if they don't, the tank is probably not tanking those Gargons anyways. Yeah. Like there's a lot that they can do, whether it be with kicks or whatever. But like it's not, I don't know, it's not normally on them.
Yeah, I mean, and the timer is tight enough in a high key in this dungeon that you actually have to do these bigger pulls, these combinations of really tough enemies. I think it's also a dungeon that gets a little bit of a rap as an easy dungeon because it is one of the easiest low key dungeons because the time, like whenever the timer doesn't matter and you can pull 3 mobs at a time in this dungeon and time it, it's extremely easy, right? Like it's not like some of the other dungeons where there's just like mini bosses that by themselves are hard no matter what.
Right.
But yeah, I think this one scales to be a really hard one in high keys.
Yeah, the timer's super tight. Like I played a 22 in there the other day, and I played it really well, and I never died. I did every single pull that was huge. I even double pulled the stuff after the second boss all at once, and we still missed the timer because we didn't have event there. And I was just like, oh my god, man.
Oh yeah, I mean, doing that under that event there, it's
I think doing that dungeon without a Venthyr Holy Paladin is really bad. Like Venthyr saves you a lot of time. I feel like Holy Paladin, that key actually saves you the most fucking time too. Like
absolutely, yeah. It's I looked at the numbers and I think it's like 5 minutes off the timer if you have a H-Pal Venthyr, at least.
Yeah, which is completely insane. A good way to build your group for damage. Let's move on to the next dungeon, which is Spires. Spires, depending on how you do it, there's actually several really tough pulls all in a row after first boss, depending on how big you're going. One of them, the first, is the double Larian pull. So let's take a look at Trell's version of this from a 21.
You can see here that the tank is not even the one gathering because the tank is not powerful.
Yeah, you still get stunned coming in here.
I don't even know how I got stunned there, by the way. Like, what? They're not even targeting me.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. And then, this pull you need to be really careful because you do get stunned on pull. If you stand in a spot where you're going to aggro all 6 Larians and then you get stunned, you will die before you come out of your stun with a very high degree of likelihood. So
yeah,
you do want to make sure that that's something you're playing around in some way or another.
People are using Bopper Turtle to be able to group the mobs.
Yeah.
And that seems like that's the biggest like point of success is like you either use Bopper Turtle and you're able to get all 6 of them. If not, then yeah, you have to like if you're playing with the Vengeance Demon Hunter, they just like Spectral Sight out one of the packs, tank like the first half of them, and then go into the second one, get an external, tank the second half of the stun. That's the scariest part, the second half of the stun, and you're just like, okay, then they're fine. But they're fine because they have to kite because they can't get that. What is it called? Rake? I don't know. It's the rake icon.
Yeah, there's a big bleed on me on my debuffs up there.
Yeah,
that thing is insane. Hey, you know what's funny about this poll is I took a break from WoW, for a couple months. When I came back, I did this poll, and everyone in the group offered to do some kind of utility to save me. And I was like, oh, people know how bad this poll is now.
Yeah, that's how you know that it's something that wipes groups a lot is when everybody in the group chimes in and is like, hey, let me use my utility on this thing.
Like Brock in this clip, Brock was like, I'll use Earth Ellie to gather, and I was like, cool, sounds good. And then as soon as I gathered, someone put down a vortex. And someone, I think I swept, and then someone used their cardboard belt, and then I used mine. Like I literally never tanked those mobs for more than 2 globals.
No, those mobs are bad. You cannot tank those mobs.
Yeah, but you also can't really just fight 3 of them at the same time. It's one of those pulls as well where even if you're fighting 3 of them at the same time, they're gonna kill you. So you may as well pull 6 and use cooldowns, because if you pull 3 and use cooldowns, it's just a waste. So yeah, the other thing that's worth noting about this pull is you have that Dark Praetor in as well, which you need to stay in melee range, or else it's going to start casting the Dark Seekers at you. So that's a big thing to manage when you're working on this pull as well. Knock effects are really, really valuable here to either keep the Larians off your tank, or to knock either the Larians or the Praetor back on top of each other so they can be AoE'd effectively. And depending on how you're going to do this pull, it usually goes into a Pride as well. Usually your Pride is going to spawn after this pull is over, and so that is something you need to be ready for as well.
Yeah, the Praetor, honestly, as a tank player, you just kind of accept that he's going to pelt you the whole time, because you're going to be kiting most of the pull.
Yeah.
So it's like a 20 to 30k damage magic hit every couple seconds you set to account for.
I mean, also, like, even if you are in melee, you would prefer to be at range and just take the Seeker from the Praetor anyways, because if you are in melee range, like, the Praetor's going to dash out, and you're going to have to, like, reposition the Stealthlings, Stealth Claws around the Praetor. So, like, your best bet is to just, like, kite circles around the Praetor with the Stealth Claws and just tank the Seeker.
Yeah, it's one of the things where that ability is on a cooldown, right? So if you get in melee range with it and it's off cooldown, it'll just instantly dash. But if it dashes and then you get in melee range with it, it won't dash again for a while. So depending on what key level you're doing and how squishy you are, you can use that mechanic to your advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So and then after this as well is some sketchy pulls too, depending on what you're doing. On the right hand side there, a lot that can be tough for your tank.
There's some ether diver shit, but I don't think I think the ether divers are like pretty clear cut with what you have to do against them. Just make sure that you're like actively kicking.
Actually, that's a good point. Ether divers, I think for some tanks that can get destroyed by magic damage, like Brewmaster, you actually don't want to kick ether divers if there's more than 2. You want to sync up their casts so that all of them hit you at the same time, and then you instantly get dispelled, so you never have a dot on you. The dot actually does far more damage than their initial hit, and so if you line it up and just have like a minor defensive, you'll be actually a lot more healthy than before. But however, I think kicking when there's 2 or less ether divers in the packs is probably a good idea, because it's easy to just stop them from casting ever.
Yeah, I mean, there are some pulls that have way more than that in terms of number of ether divers.
There's a 5 ether diver. Yeah, there's a 5 ether diver pull, which you're like, okay, well.
The 5 one, the 5 one is actually a lot easier if I sync it up with Dragon's Breath or Sweep, and then I tell people to never kick. But then there's like an Earthquake knocking stuff down and desyncing them. So
people are also spearing that pack now too, like. So I don't know. That pull has gotten a lot easier as of late, because people are. That's a pull where you have Pride and Spear on, so it's like.
Yeah.
Dude, I did this dungeon on a no Kyrian group. That was unbelievably cursed. I cannot tell you how I was taking as well as some.
That's a small pull central, bro. That's
not attempt. Well, I was playing Bear, so I just made sure I had Incarn for all those pulls, but still, extreme fear, even through Incarn, man. That was one of the cases where I was looking at my Incarn timer and I was looking at the mob's health, and I was like, okay, these things need to be decreasing at the same time, or it's all over. Let's move on to the Plaguefall. Our Plaguefall clip comes courtesy of TTV Tettles. This is the Plague Borer Gauntlet.
Okay.
What are we looking at here?
I much prefer to have the ranged player be pulling the Plague Borers than the tank. I much prefer to be pulling the Plague Borers myself, because you can also line their Wretched Flems like I did there. And then like the Plague Borers will come all the way into the trash pack. And so while the tank is actively like grouping the mobs, such as the Spine Breakers, such as, I don't know, random other mobs, like the Fervent mobs, what are they really called, or whatever else, I would personally be rather grabbing the Plague Borers. And then if you're able to get around the corner before the Phlegm goes off, then you're in good shape. The Phlegm can kill you if you're not playing a Mimkin, but if you're playing a Mimkin, you can just bear up and eat both of them and you won't die. Notably, you can also pre-freedom the Phlegm, so where it doesn't hurt you. And so that's something that you can also do. So I personally prefer to do it as the ranged DPS player in the group. Maybe Trell feels like he likes to do it as a tank.
I completely agree with you. I think you did a really good job in that clip. That's how everyone should do it. Because if they don't stop to cast either, if you're already lining them when they try to cast, then they'll get way farther than they would before because they're on a tight timer before they blow up.
I also don't really love grabbing 2. I think that grabbing 2 is typically overkill for like what you want to do, and like the left one comes up a lot further than the right one, to the point where if you're trying to pull the right one, you're probably going to get flemmed by the left one and slow it down.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's like, do you risk it and get both, or do you get one and take it farther without risk? That's a good point of contention.
Mage and Moonkin though, probably the best, because Mage can double blink and get the fuck out. Moonkin can eat the phlegm and not die. Like, those are probably the 2 best classes of being able to get them. I would suspect that Hunter's probably also good if you know what you're doing, but
yeah, and I think the freedom tech is really big as well. If you do have a Holy Paladin and you don't have like one of those players doing it, or even if it's just your tank is grabbing them, just freedoming your tank as they're getting those first Plague Borers in, and then if the Wretched Phlegms hit them, they're gonna be immune.
Tricking your
value.
Tank.
Yeah.
When they're really far away, will also do the trick. Like the Plague Borers will just run at your tank out of range. They'll never stop to cast. That's also a good one.
Okay,
I think about that one. That's a good one.
So there's really a lot of different ways to get these things in, and then of course, I mean, you're just trying to get as much value from them as possible. Do you guys ever like to try and get more than just this trash bowl hit with the Plague Borers? Like more of the enemies from behind?
Yeah, I've gone back and gotten all 6 slimes from the previous area now, and I usually do Pride with like a 10D or 2, and
yeah.
Well, it's good to combine stuff if you can.
I'm a massive fan of after you kill the mini boss and you spawn your is it 60% pride? I think you're 60% pride. You do the last 2 Plague Borers with the pride, with the fucking boss on the platform. that's the real sauce right there.
Yeah, that's
it's very scary though, and if you fuck up and miss your pride, you're probably wiping.
Yeah.
If those Plague Borers hit the boss on high key, it basically instantly gets into phase 2, and you have a pride buff going into phase 2, so you can use the pride for that bomb and then lust the 3rd bomb.
And then you lust it up. Yeah, exactly. It's really good to do it like that. Also very dangerous, and if you miss the pride, then you're probably going to wipe though.
Yeah, and you don't get a second chance because the mini boss is gone. You're never getting Plague Borers again. The key is over at that point. It is a checkmate.
No, it's not. No, it is not. The key is not over at that point.
You timed it from there?
Oh, you can time it from wiping from there. Oh, you absolutely can.
Yeah, if you play clean, that key is really free.
That key is really everything fucking dumb. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Mist's first pull of Mists, which is one of the sketchier pulls here. So this is after you've gone through the Night Phase section. We've got Trell's POV here, and it's the 5 little mobs into the Tiernan Villager and the 3 medium-sized mobs, which is actually kind of scary on Sanguine as well for Sanguine issues. The Tiernan Villager, one of the scarier Sanguine mobs.
This guy gets fully healed in this clip later on too.
But, he may get healed in this clip. I'm not exactly sure.
It did. I think Barack dropped a cardboard at the wrong time, full healed it. But that's all good. But yeah, this pull's really hard for tanks because not only did we not lust here, and so it's going to live a lot longer, and it's sanguine, so you have to kite a lot. But what's it called? Spike Claw? No, Soul Splitter. The Soul Splitter on the tank, that debuff where it hits you for high match damage.
From the
it's like a damage taken, 20% damage taken increase as well, right? From just all sources. Yeah.
Yeah, so that guy has like a 15-second internal cooldown on it and hits you very, very hard every now and then. So eventually you'll run out of defensives and just bleed out from that guy. So you want to kite him as much as you can because he also heals off hitting you. So there's multiple reasons to kite. But if the trash doesn't die quickly here, stuff also leaps around quite a bit and does high group damage. So it'll distract your healer from healing you as well.
Yeah, that's
a tough pull if it goes on for a while.
I mean, that's an important note about the leaping. Like whenever you do a pull, whenever you do this pull in particular, I actually really like first global Ursul's Vortex, and then you just like blow up the small mobs because if they get gripped back by the Ursuls, then they won't do like the AoE damage from the leap. Like it's absolutely massive to where they don't hit people with the leap. Like you can see even in this clip, like they have a Resto Druid and they like Ursul's insta. And so yeah, I mean, you could also use other things such as probably Ring of Peace. Ring of Peace probably grabs that, but I think Ursul's Vortex is like one of the utility abilities that's really, really valuable in that pull.
Yeah, especially on Sang when you want to use it early anyway, so it's a really good spot for it to go down. And then also, you can line up an AoE sweep or AoE stun from any class and try to delay their second jump, or just have a second Ursula's if you have another Druid in the group. Or even you can do some super secret tech where you proc a binding shot right before they're supposed to jump, so they don't jump with the binding, but they're already bound and can't do it.
Yeah, binding is weird like that because you need them to be in the rooted part of binding. So you drop the binding, you move, you trigger the root, and then they're rooted. But if they cast their jump before they're rooted, they will finish it and then land rooted, and that's actually bad because then they won't come back in.
Are AoE stuns worse this expansion, or are people just learning how to play without AoE stuns?
Kiting is a big thing, so I think they're a little less valuable, but they're still really good to delay the kite. But more so, I think, is because of the stupid cardboard belts. They just do more than an AoE stun can because they don't get DR'd from each other.
Well, that does seem true. That logic checks out with me. It just feels like this expansion, like we haven't seen like any AoE stun classes like being.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think another thing is there's not a ton of packs that you need to stun constantly. Yeah. Like in Mists and the Maze, that's like a BFA like pack where an AoE stun is really valuable because you can stop the rampages and the foxes and the frontals. Like you can stop so many things with stuns, but that's not always the case in all these dungeons these days.
Yeah, Windwalker is like the only one that's like you're seeing a lot of with an AoE stun. I mean, Havoc's starting to get played more and more, but like I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna be trying to do some Havoc keys at some point. That's it's just honestly, I'm worried about spending my soul ash as the thing. I kind of feel like hoarding it. Like I kind of feel like a soul ash goblin. So I kind of don't want to craft a Havoc legendary. I would really love to see a announcement from Blizzard that says I can spend my soul ash because I'm extremely I can't bring myself ever to like nerf myself in raid for the purposes of Mythic Plus, and that's the worry with doing any kind of crafting right now.
But how do you feel about asking your tank to stand close to a wall so you can continue to fell rush into the wall over and over again?
Dude, I'm just gonna fell rush. It's more fun if you're fell rushing out in the open. That's my class fantasy.
I see.
But
soon we're gonna have momentum DHs and momentum prot warriors doing dungeons together, and they're both just flying around every pack.
Dude, that's actually big value because your Havoc fell rushes away from the pack, right? And then your warrior can intervene them.
Stop, fucking stop, both of you.
Get their block up.
Just follow your Havoc DH around. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's kind of like those. They're two like linked. They got a string between them, and they're just kind of like throwing each other all over the place. All right,
and you also have intervene on the Havoc DH, so when he gets threat, when he bursts too high, you can take the damage instead.
Yeah,
that's not this expansion, bro. They don't burst that high.
They can.
They actually can.
They might next year.
Yeah. You never know.
They actually do really good damage right now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the double frog. The double frog pull. We don't have a clip for this one.
Frog.
But yeah, how does this work?
I think the easiest way of tanking this is like, if you guys have ever tanked Kragmaw, okay, so he does a tongue lash ability, and if you guys have ever tanked Kragmaw with his indigestion or whatever, the breath, you tank the frog in the exact same way, right? Where you're pre-stepping, like you're pre-strafing the frontal from the tongue lash, and if there's two frogs, you just like. I think perpetually moving probably with double frog is your best bet.
Yeah, you basically have to just kite.
How does when we're talking about double frog, what does this like? What does this mean?
So the Gorge Gullet, like the Gorge Gullet room, like whenever you walk in, on the left side, you can like see an enemy nameplate of another Gorge Gullet. And like any 40-yard ability can just tag that thing, and then it just like comes streaming on in, and you're just like, all right. Then you have two frogs that you're actively fighting, and they're both 12 kind of piece. So
it's good value.
It's really efficient. Yeah, it is probably the most efficient pull in that dungeon.
And it's because you have to kill one of them anyway, so you're already doing a mini boss. You may as well fight the other one as well. Get some big cleave.
Yeah.
But it's like very dangerous for melee and melee healers. That's for sure.
I just think like constantly moving in a circle as the tank, like constantly strafing in a circle, making sure that you're not getting hit from behind is probably your best bet. And then you're having your melee follow behind the frogs. The frogs also do a leap, which is fucking annoying because they can leap, and then the tongue lash can get like cast while the tank is not even nearby, and so you can get sniped by that as a melee. But it's a rough pull for melee. I think as a tank though, you just need to make sure that you're not getting tongue lashed.
Yeah, also something we should have put in here, I think, is the dragon mini boss instead. The dragon mini boss in Mists of Tyranid Scythe will one shot the tank basically on any high key without a major CD up to mitigate the what's it called, armor break or
The crush armor, or
crush armor.
Break.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
Talon breaks the other dragon. Ignore that.
Yeah. So this guy does the armor hit, whatever. It will one shot you, and it does shred armor. That's what it's called. And the second stack will for sure kill the tank. So the tank has to outrange the second one before it overlaps the debuff. So you take the double armor reduction or whatever it is. And if you outrange it long enough, you can reset your stacks and take like just a single stack one. But you have to also tell your group to get away from it because it will kill the nearest melee player when you kite.
Yeah, the fervent strike technology. Love that. All right, let's talk about Sanguine Depths. We have the Mist Dancer pulls in this dungeon. Again, we don't have a clip for this one, but this right near the start of the dungeon, for instance, there's the Mist Dancer pull that I've seen wipe many a group. Although they did nerf the Mist Dancers a couple weeks ago, but they're still they can still be pretty deadly.
Funny meme about this Mist Dancer pull. I was looking for a clip of it, and I was like scrolling through Troll's VOD, and I found a Sanguine Depth, and this man just like shroud skips the Mist Dancers. I'm like, all right, thanks for this.
I didn't pull a single Mist Dancer yet.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's good and bad. Like Mist Dancers are really tough mobs to do. They're lieutenants, you can't kite them. You have to just manage their frontals over and over again and sidestep. But also, if you skip that one at the start, the ticks that spawn and keep running in from the first boss area don't ever stop spawning. So they just keep flooding in through the door, and you have to play around that. It's actually really interesting. I learned that the other day.
Really?
Huh.
Yeah, there's like two ticks every 10 seconds or something that just fly from the first boss room through the like passageway from the start of the dungeon.
Is that a bug? Like,
no, just RP.
It's just RP that turns off once you feel the Mist Dancer.
That the Mist Dancer doesn't. Okay, that's weird. Okay.
Let's also talk. Okay, so in Sanguine Depths, in addition to the Mist Dancer pulls, there's the ring, the second boss ring, that contains the scribes, which are archers. You can think of them just as archers, and the books are their bows.
Yeah.
They throw books.
Yeah. Which are extremely damaging, and also these things are extremely tough to move. How do you go about managing these mobs?
So one, if you're a DK, you can just grip them every time a circle goes down and you need to move the pack. But if you're any other tank, basically, you have to treat them like they're an archer. And archer mobs are actually something you learn as a tank player, how to move eventually if you do enough dungeons. And to move any kind of archer mob, you have to wait till they finish their ranged cast and then move slightly out of their hitbox right at that second. And they'll follow you and stay in melee range of you if you do it just right. But you have to like never leave that sweet spot basically to keep them moving. Yeah,
you can actually move them for like basically infinite time where they won't cast. You can do this with like the 6 pull in Spires of Ascension as well, with the 6 that you line behind the pillar. This is actually important to do on Sanguine as well, because you need to keep them moving for Sanguine if one of them's dying early, and so you're just kind of dead zoning them like you do to Hunters in TBC Classic, for anybody playing TBC Classic, where you're just standing like 5 to 8 yards away from them, and you're just kind of slowly pulling them, but you need to make sure you're not running too fast or too slow. Because as soon as they get in melee range with you again, or as soon as you're like actually far enough away, they will do their cast. You can also move scribes, like especially if they're farther away, by using the inner part of the wall to line of sight, or you can
go
outrange
inside one of the cells.
But all of that is a lot slower than just moving them if they are in melee with you by doing that kind of archer drag tech. That's really tank dependent, whether or not your tank is able to kind of pull that off reliably. It's hard even for experienced tanks that know what they're doing, and I think a lot of tanks don't know that. So, very useful bit of tech.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Also, the last mini boss of Plaguefall is the same way. Even though he's a caster, he's kind of an archer mob outside of his casts. So you have to kick him and then do the archer mob thing where you move barely outside of his hitbox to move him. It's the only way to move him.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Necrotic Wake. We have the Flesh Crafters in Necrotic Wake, and let's see, Tettles, do you wanna break down what is going on with these pulls?
So the first one is just like a normal Fleshcrafter pull. I think the biggest deal for the Fleshcrafter is, at least as the tank or as any member of the group, is like knowing whenever the Fleshcrafter is on you that you need to be like angling it into the trash pack and know like, I mean, ideally you're hitting either the oh goodness the big guys. I don't know exactly what they're called.
The Kyrian Stitchworks. Yeah,
the Stitchworks. The Stitchworks. And then alternatively oh gosh, there's the other mob that's with the pack that you see pulled there too. No, it's the big, both of the high HP mobs, whatever the hell they're called. You want to be hitting something with the cleaver, regardless of whatever it is. Yeah, Loyal Creation, that's exactly what it is. You want to be hitting something with the cleaver and just not angling it in the tank. But like as a tank, you need to understand like whenever the cleaver is not going to be lobbed into the mob, that you have to be tanking it. And there's a lot of things that you can do with the cleavers, and like honestly too, it's really nice to keep those crafters, the flesh crafters, up during the pride, because you can also like lob the cleavers into the pride. That's actually a pretty big time gain as well. So that's definitely something that you have to think about. I think the biggest point of contention for this is probably the two dudes that spawn, the two RP guys that spawn. One of them does like the fixation, but they both do the cleaver cast, and like you have to make sure that you're watching like whether or not your people who are getting targeted with the cleaver are actually going to be able to make it.
And if somebody's double targeted as well, your tank needs to stand. You need to stand not between the two mobs, but on the like basically you need to intercept one and they have the other hit one of them.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I mean, you always need to be soaking that as the tank. If in doubt, what you can do is you can just like charge or intervene or run to the person being targeted, rather than trying to intercept it from close to the mob. Because if you're trying to intercept it from close to the mob, a little movement can make it go around you. But if you just get next to the person that's being targeted, the downside of that is that it might hit somebody else on the trajectory. But the upside is you can keep a close bead on the person being targeted. So depending on whether you've lost track of what's going on, that can be a good tip. What is the what's the technology here we're about to see in this next clip from Turkey?
I think you know like kind of how this works probably if you've watched MDI.
Yeah.
So if you MC the Fleshcrafter, you can actually continue the RP in the room, but it only works with priest mind control. From what I understand, it may end up working with like control undead or some shit from like a DK or whatever. But from what I understand, it just works with like priest MC. You're able to continue the RP in the room, and then so they keep this Fleshcrafter either polymorphed, rooted, whatever, off to the side. They use the cleavers intermittently. They use it on the boss, but like they don't really use it on all the trash packs, but they use it sometimes. And then they end up like so after they kill Stitch Flesh, they take the portal up top. Eventually, the Fleshcrafter teleports up to them. It allows them to get those throw cleavers, which is actually really good for breaking the Nalthor shield.
Mm-hmm.
The Nalthor shield, especially on high levels, does a lot of periodic damage. So that being able to be broken by that cleaver is actually a pretty big deal.
I thought they made bosses immune to the cleavers after we one-shot bosses with bolstering, but
they made the crafters not bolster, or not the throw cleaver ability doesn't benefit from bolstering stacks.
Gotcha.
It does benefit from raging though. So if you are playing on a raging week, there's value to raging your flesh crafters. But yeah, it does not scale up in damage with bolstering. It's the ability itself is like hard coded to not benefit from bolstering.
Yeah,
which is a weird solution, but it does fix the problem of carrying one of those things around as a skyscraper, just one-shotting everything with its
God, whenever I saw that
was so funny, man.
Bad flashbacks of Siege of Bralis. You're just like,
yeah, I'm glad they shut that down nice and quick. Although, and honestly, I think the Fleshcrafters landed in a pretty okay spot in terms of It's
the weapons are by far the most egregious part of that dungeon. It's not the flesh crafter.
Yeah. All right. Those are the specific pulls we had picked out this week. If we missed any, though, if anybody has any big suggestions for ones that we missed, we could do, especially just one or two more, kind of as a special thing, or like an extra thing in a future episode. So if you got any good suggestion for those, do let us know. We want to do more topics like last week's one, for not just for tanks, but for healers, and maybe also for like ranged and melee too. So we'll look into doing those at some point in the future, although we may give it a couple weeks to do other topics, especially as we approach the 9.1 PTR. Very exciting to hear that. But there's our main topic for the week, so we will get over to Q&A via our favorite part of the show, the thanking of the patrons, where we get to find out what their wacky names are this week, what the exciting acronym is going to be, all sorts of things that we get to find out right now. So first off, we have Paul, can't pick a healer to main. Sports Bra Hot Venthier Tank GF of Tichondrius US. What in Tarnation Riley? What's that, John?
Oh, tank in all caps. I think she recently transitioned to tank.
I think there's emphasis on tank, yeah. I actually remember reading about this in the Discord, but I've forgotten, so I forgot what was going on.
Thanks for this.
Yep, that's me. Delete DH can handle 50 stacks of necrotic, no problem, but should he?
Yes.
Yeah, you can. No problem. Yeah, if you can handle it, no problem. I don't know who can do that though. I think that might be
just bears.
That's true. Yeah, bear and Incarn. Dr. Tree forever in the other side prison hunting a scale. Jaw, Dratnos' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Trekkie, the Marshare, Regulus, Nevernude, Chewy, Trell, aka Texan Rodeo, entertaining Lady Leadrin.
Yeehaw!
DPS and Castle Nathria as a healer for easy orange parses. ZivXX. Do you want to build a snowman? Necris. Tankdill. Nevuk. Sinmora. Eevee. Oh god, please buff Frosty K in PvE. Stevenson. Love the Constantinople bit. Take Light of the Protector and Frenzied Regen off the GCD. No Trick. I scheduled a Tetal's Flame. Sire Dematicus. Ellipsis, future Worgen Survival Hunter in 9.1. Dymat, Syncope the Sleep Deprived. Follow guidelines, wear a mask, or die at home. Good, only a couple more months. Actually, not even necessarily months. Only potentially a couple more weeks, and we'll be out of this thing. So
getting my vaccine soon. Very pog.
Yeah, it should be in the next couple of days that I can sign up for an appointment as well here.
Oh, that's good.
Extreme hype.
Very
Why
pog.
is picking a main so hard? We are praying Hanny will bump in 9.1. So sad. Nyx. Lance isn't a common name. However, in medieval times, people were named Lance a lot. Oh. Oh, God. Brusif. Dratnos Bouncer Biss. Stop sending fresh fruit in the mail. I'm crying here. M Sanity. Canyon and Moon Sonara of Emerald Dream Division 7 and Area 52 Scraw. Xena. Rogue is now good enough for Prog, but still bad enough to be sat for SLG. Bless up. Red Color. Some Zero of Tichondrius is out of SLG prison. YouTube.com/Workbringer. Morty died 3 times to mechanics this week. Ahara vs Proudmore. And Vague wears the wrong Lego and chooses the wrong stats. Choosing the wrong stats is extreme tragedy on your legendary.
That's strats, bro. That's us strats.
Oh, it chooses the wrong strats. Dude, I assumed it was stats because it was talking about Legos, but yeah, okay. Wears the wrong Lego and chooses the wrong strats, so not as bad. It is a big tragedy, though, to choose the wrong stats on your Lego. That's like a permanent mistake.
Yeah, that is tragedy.
Or choosing the wrong slot as well. You like craft a ring instead of pants or whatever because you have slightly better pants on at the time. Don't do that. All right, let's move on to our Q&A section. Our first question comes from Alcaris in Discord, who asks, what's advice you'd offer to groups that are currently timing 18s and 19s, but unable to break into 20s and 21s? What are major areas they should be looking at to improve?
I think routing is probably the easiest way. So, like, you can probably do like 18s and 19s with like really, really traditional routing, just like the typical like hold W style routes. But like once you start to get to like the 20s and 21 area, you have to actually start pulling pretty aggressively. And like honestly, you can time 21s. Like if you have 226 item level people, you can time 21s and 20s with a full wipe as long as you are pulling in a way that is conducive to that. So like we were joking about in Plaguefall. I mean, dude, we timed like a 23 or 22 Plaguefall with like a full wipe. We had like 9 deaths, something like that. But like the only way you're going to be able to do that even in like other dungeons, like obviously Plaguefall's a pretty extreme outlier, but you're able to do that with like 9 deaths even in on 20s and 21s in like Halls of Atonement, even in dungeons like DOS, even in dungeons like that. But you have to pull like the Art of World pull. Like a lot of groups on 18s and 19s won't do pull that size. You need to be doing 60% of your count on World. You need to be doing or you can like even start skipping prides. That's a pretty big time save as well, especially on Sanguine Week. There's a lot of things that you can do, but typically I think more aggressive routing is the key to success here.
And I would just add in the hard pulls like one at a time. Like try a new big pull once when you get to a new key level. Don't add like every single high key pull at the same time to transition your group from the traditional route to the high key route. It's just too much to learn all at once. So take it in steps and do what you could. What do you think your group can handle if you're the tank player, basically?
Yeah, I think that's a really common way for a group to struggle. Although I would say that it's, you know, every group is different, and some groups are like already doing their big pulls. Depending on who your tank is, they're already like they're just doing those at every key level. And you know, the way to improve from 18s to 19s up to 20s to 21s is potentially something else for some groups. But I think that Tuttles has hit a really the most common thing that is the wall.
Yeah,
for groups around that level right now.
Yeah. The only other thing is probably like survivability. Like that's that's probably the only other thing that would like be limiting you from jumping from 18 to 19 to 20 to 21 is like if your people aren't living. But that's like a completely different issue, and something that like
that's like individual as well rather than
collective. That's I think it's easily identifiable if you're having survivability issues and you just like, because people are doing the dungeons on 25s, right? So there definitely is an answer. What the answer is going to vary case by case. And like obviously there's shit like healing a prideful with a holy paladin without cooldowns. You have shit like that happening right now on like 21s and stuff, and like 23s even, and you're like, how do they do that? And you just like have to look back and like, oh, their druid is like Heart of the Wild healing. What the fuck is this? And so like there are answers. May not always be the most conventional thing though.
Yeah, I would say 20s and 21s is like that level where you can still do everything without needing specific comps, but it's where it starts to be like really hard if you know, you might start looking at like, okay, what are they doing in 24s and 25s, and you just don't see anybody of your spec at that point. And you need to come up with your own way to make it work. But there's usually still an answer with whatever your comp is at that level.
20s and 21s are definitely still within the realm of possibility to play any comp.
Yeah, definitely.
Next question comes from Russ in Discord, who asks, assuming the blood spattered scale, which is of course that tank trinket from the other side, stays a meta trinket in 9.1, do we believe tanks may continue to use the cheat death trinket from Sun King Salvation going into 9.1? How much better of a tanky trinket would the Sanctum of Domination raid need to have to replace the cheat death trinket in M+?
That's a good question.
It is an interesting one, yeah, because people have used old cheat death trinkets before in M+ like future seasons. I think I remember the
Bonsomdi's Bargain.
Bonsomdi's Bargain was used in Eternal Palace season to some extent. Actually, there were several good trinkets. There was the diamond laced refracting prism or whatever.
Yeah, I think the shield trinket was more often used, but it was an option. The Bonsomdi's Bargain.
Yeah.
I think in this case for the question though, it's going to depend on how tanks end up landing at 9.1 with scaling, and if they make any more tanky changes. Like if we're able to tank pulls more often than not, a little bit more than this patch, then probably not the cheat death. But having the cheat death as an option for something like Plaguefall, where you're just constantly getting berated by huge magic hits if something goes wrong, then it will still be a good option for sure.
Yeah, this season it's unbelievably noticeable like how strong double cheat death is on a tank currently. Having access to like Vengeance with like Last Resort and cheat death trinket, being able to like that really helps them scrape by pulls from time to time. Like, and if your tank is dying, like that is like the fastest way for you to be able to deplete the key too. So it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I do think there's probably not any M plus trinket that at like 252 or whatever is going to beat a 226 Sun King trinket for M plus utility, besides the scale. But maybe, and yeah, the raid trinkets, like there's often good raid trinkets for tanks. So and there's a good chance they might even make another cheat death trinket. So we'll definitely have to see exactly what they are in particular. My guess is there will be something that is at least sometimes and maybe always better than the Sun King one, but it depends. Sometimes they make tiers where there's no good tank trinkets, and in which case we'll keep using the that one. Yeah, I mean the Blood Spatter scale I think is very likely to stay unless they nerf that trinket in particular. I think the whole expansion tanks are going to have one of those equipped. I think it's so
they're
good.
just too good on pull. They're so good on pull to get your stuff rolling before you have a lot of threat.
And threat as well. Yeah. It makes threat and it makes you tankier on pull. That's extremely strong.
I would really like to see something like the Urchin trinket come back, or Diamond Lace Prism, like we talked about. Any kind of big healing trinket is always super nice to have.
Yeah, I think that the tank space is hurting for something like that. I think a good like active defensive trinket as well is something that we could see. There's Sanguine Vintage from Sire, but that's more of just like an extra health stone. That's a strong, strong trinket, but
I have a 233 of that I used with my scale the other day, and I pressed it like 16 times in the key, and it did like.
It's not good with double on use, for sure. It's that one's a weird one because it's like it's theoretically pretty good, but it feels like it does not scale well into harder content particularly well. Whereas the scale, I think, is just a big enough shield that is still relevant in high keys. But the Sanguine Vintage is like, it's shorter cooldown. You can use it more often. If you're using it a lot, it's a lot of value. There's even a couple spots where you can get good value out of having the shield and then like the double heal. But for the most part, it's just like an extra health potion. Anyways, I'm rambling about tank trinkets. Titles, is there anything else you want to cover? Any other questions you wanted to grab? Okay.
I don't have anything else.
Then that's it. That's the end of our show. We will be back next week with another one. I hope everybody enjoyed this look at more drilled down to specific polls. Again, let us know what you think. Always, we do respond to feedback. Discord is a great place to do that in our Discord, where there'll be a link in the description. You can also find all the clips if you are listening to the audio or you just want to find them later. What I'll do is I'll make a Pastebin link with all the clips as well. Shout out to, of course, Trell's stream where we grabbed a bunch of those, and also Dorky Bear. Grabbed a lot of clips from his stream for this episode. Extremely good, just all around tank streamer if you're ever looking to for someone to study to get better. So 100% recommend that stream basically at all times. Anyways, later everybody. Bye.
Bye.